Go for it.
All right, so welcome back to the podcast, guys. I don't think we have an official name for us yet. We were tossing around names the other day, but nothing really stuck. So if you guys happen to have an idea or something like that to throw on with the rest of our recommendations, then go ahead and have at it. But right now, we are on Daenerys. What number chapter is this for Daenerys?
Daenerys 5.
Daenerys 5, A Game of Thrones. So to reiterate, real quick, the way this podcast goes, we'll first talk about who the main character is, who the chapter focuses on, and then we'll do a quick summary of what actually happened in the chapter. We'll move on to who held the biggest influence on the main character and why. Our next point is knowing how the future plays out. What should the character have done differently if they wanted to avoid the result that we do get? Next up is how do the actions in this chapter affect the other plots? We move on to best lines, standout appearances from other characters, and then any theories that may apply. So we hit 8 talking points. We're trying to shoot for around 40, 35 minutes, but we're not really set and holding on to that kind of time standard. So the conversation goes where the conversation goes, and we'll see how it all turns out. So right off the bat, number one, main character, as it is a Dany POV, I think she is the main character in this whole thing. The events in the chapter revolve around her and what she's doing in like 3 different locations. So there's other people that come in and they have like big influences on what happens in the chapter, but for the most part, it's all centered around Dany. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I had it split up into 2 parts. Basically for the first half of the chapter, but I guess the entire chapter really, Dany and Rhaego, and then the second half, Drogo and Viserys. But yes, I agree. It's Dany throughout the entire chapter.
So a quick summary of the chapter, and this is going to be very, very non-formal. It's kind of how we go here. So it opens up and she starts eating the horse heart, the Dothraki ritual for reasons. So she gets told her kid's gonna conquer the world. She gets all that down. She chokes it down. Doesn't throw up or anything like that. Walks down to the lake. She gets laid. Drogo comes in 3 pumps. Then they go and they eat afterwards because I guess that makes you hungry. I understand. Viserys shows up. He's drunk and he's being an asshole. He starts talking shit to Dany. Draws a sword. Pisses everybody off. So Drogo's like, yeah, cool. I'll give you a crown. And then he gives him his crown. That's the lightning fast summary of what happens in the chapter, and we're about to talk about this for 40 minutes. Did I leave out anything?
Nope, you got it all.
Alright, so who held the biggest influence over Daenerys in this chapter? So I don't think this was actually any one person, but it was the overall Dothraki culture that molded and manipulated everything that she did here. Drogo and the Crones had played parts in that, but really it was just this overall atmosphere and this, I don't want to call it religion, but it's basically their kind of religious, what am I looking for? Like,
it's their cultural practices.
Yeah, stuff like that really just, ritual, that's what I was going for. It's this ritual that just governs her entire actions throughout here. Especially with the heart ritual, like eating the horse heart, like if she throws it up or if she coughs in the blood or anything like that, it's bad news, right?
Yeah, the child would be stillborn or deformed, or even worse, it would be a female.
Yeah, I remember reading that. I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
We'd rather have a deformed child than a girl. And, but I mean, I guess with the way the Dothraki culture roll, well, no, because she would live, I guess, if the kid came out all deformed and scaly, like, spoiler alert, he does. They probably would have killed it from the get-go. But yeah, so it's a lot of emphasis put on choking down the blood and eating this raw horse heart. How big are horse hearts, by the way?
I don't know. I'm not a farmer.
Yeah, because farmers would know.
Wouldn't they?
I'm just trying to get an idea, like, how big it would actually be, and, like, I don't know.
Well, I've dissected a cow heart. That was probably about the shape of a football, maybe. So pretty big, yeah? No?
It's a good base point. I'd imagine it's probably larger than a human heart.
Did she eat the whole thing? She had to, right?
Yeah. She chokes on the whole thing.
Okay.
And then going back with the Dothraki culture, the seating assignments at the feast, she doesn't get to decide where she sits. That's already kind of made up for her, and the whole time it's just doing playing the part in this Dothraki culture.
Yeah, I agree. I had that as well. Really, that it was all focused around the Dothraki ritual. But then I also wrote down Jorah because Jorah really influences the whole crowning incident. Because he translates what's happening or doesn't translate for Viserys, Drogo getting pissed off, and everything else that's happening.
True. Yeah, I wasn't seeing that as Jorah having influence over Daenerys there.
Oh yeah, well.
But I mean, he does influence the situation and the culminating event of the chapter. So yeah, I guess it does count. I just wasn't looking at it like that way. All right, so knowing how the future plays out, what should Dany have done differently? And I put everything kind of worked out for her.
Yeah, I couldn't really come up with anything.
If we could have commanded Jorah to stay with Viserys instead of been oh, well, you should have done that. Prior, she should have been hang out with Viserys, make sure he doesn't get into trouble. But I mean, that's even reaching, and then that's going back to other chapters. It doesn't really apply to her actions in this particular one. So yeah, for that one, it was just everything kind of worked out good for her. If she really wanted to save Viserys, she could have jumped up and told or asked Drogo to stop. But I mean, he seemed like he pretty much had his mind made up. Viserys drew his sword and was threatening to kill his baby. So
yeah, but she's the one that translated that to Drogo. Drogo didn't know what was going on. He's a Neanderthal. He doesn't understand the common tongue, whatever. So
accurate, but well, was it Jiqui or
no?
Taria?
She was too scared.
Don't fucking make me translate this because he's gonna do bad shit to me if I tell him this.
Yeah, it was one of the girls.
So
it was Jiqui.
Yeah.
Is that how you say her name? I don't even know how to say half of these things.
I mean, I only know it from the way Preston pronounces it, and he's notorious for saying things wrong, so it probably isn't Jiqui, but
whatever.
It's not a name that I ever said out loud before, so.
Who the fuck names their child Jiqui?
Savages. Alright, so, because that was a relatively short one, our next talking point is how do the actions in this chapter affect the other plots. This is going to be an interesting one for us to tackle because for the longest time, Daenerys' plot is fairly separate from everyone else's. The actions in hers, long distance, once Winds comes out, if she actually brings her dragons over to Westeros, maybe then, they'll start having consequences on the other plots, or even in Dance whenever we get to see Quentin and Barristan and all of them. But for this one, kind of reaching, but I mean, this solidifies her as Aerys' heir. Most of the stuff that happens here just influences her future plot, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Not much other characters, but it influences her future. So it solidifies her as Aerys' heir and the last Targaryen, assuming young Griff is not Aegon.
Well, at this point, we don't know about him. So just from this point for this book, yes, she is now the last Targaryen. But then we know later on, there may or may not be another Targaryen.
Correct. And I think this binds her even closer to Drogo. It kind of intertwines their fates a little bit more. Her eating the heart and him looking on with pride, and her looking at him to get strength to chew and swallow and shit like that. So this really brings them closer together and had everything played out differently. I imagine their relationship would have been a lot more cooperative instead of one-sided like that. And she also gets the idea that she doesn't want to be in the Dashkalian if Drogo does die. She really sees them all there, and she's just I don't know if I can do that.
Well, who would want to? I wouldn't want to do that either.
Savages.
But yeah, so I pretty much agree with everything you said. I had that basically at this point, Dany takes over Viserys' ambitions of reclaiming the throne. It's not until I think the next chapter or the chapter after that is when Dany gets attacked at the market, and that's when Drogo decides that he wants to take his what is it, Khalasar? Take them over to Westeros or whatever. So at this point, like she isn't pushing for it, but she will.
Well, the Crones definitely do. They start saying, when they announce the stallion who mounts the world, they're going to go kill all the white men in their stone tents and all that stuff. So
yeah, I picked out some stuff from that.
There.
I picked out some stuff from that passage, which is kind of weird, and it's also like, this is not an insult. It's like Katie level, connecting the dots. Yeah, so I'll save that for later, but just letting you know.
Okay, so like I said, not a whole lot of effect on other people's plot lines right now. It's fairly secluded. I know Barristan shows up there later, so maybe then we can start talking about like how her stuff affects Barristan. How does it affect Jorah? I know Jorah's not a POV chapter, but he's still a pretty major character.
Well, it changes him from being Viserys' sworn sword, which is what Dany calls him in this chapter, to, taking over for Dany. But regardless, he didn't give a shit about Viserys.
Yeah, he might have been Viserys' sworn sword in name, but
yeah.
Really, like, he was only ever there for Daenerys. I assume prior to this book, Jorah already, knew that Viserys was probably not as there, as put together.
Well, yeah, they've seen him be crazy already.
Yeah, I think Jorah's mind was made up a long time ago, but he definitely didn't care. He kind of knew Viserys was probably going to make an idiot out of himself sooner or later. But not like, we don't know what he whispers to him or what he yells at him, but publicly he says, like, do as she tells you, you're going to get us all killed. So I want to think that like he was actually like telling him like, dude, chill out, man.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna get us all killed for real, and then he just like snaps and says it out loud instead of goading him or anything like that. I've seen people say that where he was like kind of pushing Viserys to like act like an idiot so he would get killed. But I tend to kind of think he was maybe not his best. However, the amount of effort he was giving was not enough, obviously. But I think he was supposed to try to calm Viserys down and try to keep him alive.
Like, he was trying to de-escalate the situation because, they're surrounded by thousands of Dothraki. They're obviously outnumbered. But at the same time, it's not like he tried to protect him. He didn't go with him to the market. And he even says, hopefully, Viserys doesn't steal anything.
Best lines for the, what was that? Sorry. Best lines from the chapter. Or standout line, or best lines.
Best lines.
So I said probably Drogo if we would have known what he said, because there's like a lot of times where like he talks in Dothraki to his other Cal buddies, and they start like laughing whenever he's talking shit about the series. And I was just like, oh man, I wish I would have known what he said there. Probably was really funny. But really, like a lot of the stuff that he said was pretty good. Like telling Viserys his place was in the back in the corner. For the what do you call them? The Cart King.
Yes.
Yeah, Kyle Rackett. So yeah, just him shitting all over Viserys a lot. I thought that was kind of entertaining. Dany didn't really say a whole lot of things that stood out to me, and neither did Jorah really.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot that stood out. Like the description or the prophecy that the Crones give of Rhaego was really interesting. But other than that, I think the only thing I kind of noted was that, Dany shifts in her perspective where she doesn't even call Viserys anymore. It's the man that was her brother. She already knew he was going to die, and she was fine with it.
Yeah, I picked up on that, and I was going to kind of save that for a little bit later. But yeah, we'll remember that quote where she shifts from calling him Viserys to the guy who used to.
The man who had been her brother.
Yeah. But yeah, I did pick up on that too, how it shifts in the middle of the chapter there. Or, well,
It's like the last page. I didn't hear anything you just said.
Oh yeah, so the video feed. Yeah, no, I was just saying like something kept popping up on my screen and it was trying to reconnect me to the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't say anything for that. Anything of value. Do you have anything else for quotes?
No, that's as interesting as this chapter is. Like for some of our talking points, like it doesn't really hit them. Like there's plenty to discuss, but like best lines,
Yeah, because none of them talked English. Speak English. Standout appearances. So obviously Viserys' last moments, they have to stand out. They're his last day on Earth, and it was pretty pathetic. I mean, he hung out with some of his new buddies in the market. I mean, like, wow, like, start pounding the wine, I guess. But towards the end, it was pretty pathetic. He threatens to kill a child. You're gonna go. He calls his sister a whore. Yeah, he called her that. Yeah.
yeah, he does.
I'm sure he does. I know I read it.
He says, "Where is the whore?"
But yeah, so not a grand exit on his part, but Drogo definitely stands out, and he was the star in Viserys' last moment there. I mentioned before talking down on him, giving him some real sick burns, and then pun actually. Really.
I didn't even catch that.
That was not planned. But yeah, and then tosses off his belt, melts his belt down, and then gives him a crown. Real strong performance from Drogo. For him being a barbarian war chief, it's kind of odd for us to cheer for him, but Viserys was such a prick that it kind of makes sense for us to do that. So.
Yay, go
rapist. Danny. What was that?
Nothing.
My video cut out. It sped up. Danny eating the heart, I had as a standout performance too. So that's some rough shit. Like the descriptions in here about how she was eating it was just like really fucking gross. Taking a bite and then having blood gush into it.
And it being stringy, and it just sounds disgusting.
Stringy and all muscle, and it's like smearing on her face, and it's just blood. It's like that's gross. And she didn't throw up. She didn't, cough up anything. Good job, Danny.
Yeah.
Good job.
Wow.
I'm not. So, props to you. Do you have anything else for standout performances?
Nope, I had the same thing for Drogo.
Oh, something that stood out to me is there's a lot of genitalia in this description, or in this chapter.
So I had that thought, but I didn't write it down.
Yeah, I didn't write it down, but
okay.
I remembered it because there's the old jugs of the crones, or Dugs. Withered Dugs.
Is that what that means? I didn't know what that was.
It was oil. Oh, fuck, I always thought it meant tits.
Oh, I don't know. I was thinking about like when George is describing her vulva hitting the water, her lower lips. I was just like, oh, that's disturbing.
Lower lips. Drogo's manhood.
Yeah.
Keeps popping out. The quick pumps and his seed. Like a lot of sexual references, a lot of genitalia references. It's a bit more prevalent in this chapter than another one we've done. So stood out, uncomfortably so, but whatever.
That's gotta be rough for Jorah. Like since we know how he feels about her later on, like he literally has to stand there and watch her get fucked by Drogo. But that's gotta be awkward.
I suppose. I mean, like, is he into her at this point?
I'm sure he's at least attracted to her.
Yeah, probably.
Cause does he kiss her in Clash or Sword?
Don't recall. We're not at that point in the read.
Not the point. You should know this. You should know these things.
Anything else that stood out to you?
No, that was it.
Alright, so we move on to theories. So the stallion who mounts the world. There's theories that means Drogon. With the way how things play out. Is that what you think it means?
I think I've heard that before. And I guess that makes sense. I don't know. I've never really put too much thought into it because Rhaego died. And the way prophecy works in the story, prophecy is bullshit all around, you know? For the most part, anyways.
Yeah, I don't know how much weight we're putting into the Dothraki prophecies and stuff. But they definitely thought it meant, like, a human child who would grow up to be a human man, not a dragon. Like, if it happens to turn out that Dany, or the three eggs hatch children, and then Drogon turns this new age, then technically her child was this thing who destroyed the world, or, caused the biggest, destruction and havoc on the world.
Yeah.
Technically, I get the biggest stress. It does prove the prophecy true. And, like, who's to say that that's what the prophecy was not referring to? But, I mean, I don't think that's what the intent of that prophecy was to refer to a dragon.
Yeah, no, because it talks about here. So the entire passage, well, I don't know if I want to read the entire passage, because I can't pronounce some of this stuff. As swift as the wind he rides, and behind him his Khalasar covers the earth, men without number, with Arik shining in their hands like blades of razor grass. Fierce as a storm this prince will be. His enemies will tremble before him, and their wives will weep tears of blood and rend their flesh in grief. The bells in his hair will sing his coming, and the milkmen in the stone tents will fear his name. So a lot of that, like, could apply to the dragons. I can see it,
Yeah.
Because how can you not be scared of dragons?
Yeah, but then we're like, it's because it's a prophecy. We're trying to apply it.
Yeah, we're twisting it to fit.
Child, or like a person, a man. And it very well could mean a dragon, but the Dothraki, they're not very dragon focused. So, like, why would the Dothraki have a prophecy about a dragon?
Well, so I think it's Preston who brings it up. So in Clash, when Dany and the remaining Dothraki, when they go through the Red Waste and they find, I think they name it Vace Teloro or something like that. Don't they find a dragon skeleton out there?
Yeah.
So, kind of reading into that, the Dothraki have some type, you would think anyways, that they have some type of relationship and at least knowing that dragons exist.
True, but I mean that would still be quite a ways back.
It's still reaching. It's yeah.
Because I think that one was what, Sheep Stealer, Nettles. Nettles
I think that's it would have been Nettles.
It seems because they haven't been around Ashai. We don't know if there's dragons in Ashai now, do we? No one's ever been to Ashai. We don't hear.
No, we don't know for sure.
I don't think there are, but I mean, like, it almost seems like more likely that a dragon from that area kind of just flew out from the mountains.
Ended up over there.
Because, like, why would Nettles in the Dance of Dragons fly that far out to Karth? Almost.
Where was Nettles from? She had dark skin. I remember that. Is she Ibonese?
I can't recall.
Or Dornish? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't part of my research for the show. But no, like, it just doesn't make sense why Nettles would go that far out to escape, the Dance of the Dragons.
Well, to escape the crazy bitch.
Yeah, like, there's a lot of stops in between face to Laurel and King's Landing. So
Yeah.
it just seems like she went a little overkill on fleeing. Okay, so the next thing I have is Daenerys mad already? So this goes back to your quote where she, in mid-chapter, she flips to thinking from calling him Viserys to the man that used to be my brother. And what I have, like, what really stood out to me was when Viserys walks in, she's like begging, like, come on, dude, like, chill out. If you want the dragon, you want the eggs, you can take the eggs. You can do all this. Just calm down, put the sword down, like, everything's fine. And then it's like at the end, her last line is, dragon, curiously calm, like really worrying about her. He's the only thing that she has left that had told her about her family. To 2 minutes later, being just like, oh, I guess he wasn't a dragon.
Yeah.
It's like that's like being like latching on to this dude and like.
You're cutting out.
Like the importance of this guy too. Good.
Can you do like all of that again because it froze and I didn't like hear anything?
Okay, so she goes from vocalizing like how important Viserys is to her, with telling him telling her about her family, like giving her all her family history. She wouldn't have known anything if it wasn't for Viserys. And then not 2 minutes later, she's just like, oh, he's not a dragon, I guess. Like, that's a really sharp shift right there. It's a strange, contrast between her being curiously calm and really worried and, like, trying to, like, telling him he can have dragon eggs. He can do this. We'll do this. Yeah. Like, really trying to compromise, not even compromise, but, like, give in to everything so that he can stay alive. And then she just switches to, he burned. That's weird.
Well, in her defense, he did threaten her
is
child.
She already starting to lose?
Like, wouldn't you react negatively if someone threatened your child?
Yes. But, like, wasn't she still trying to, like, save them afterwards?
No, it was before all that she was telling Jorah he can have the eggs and whatever else.
Her having a beer. Yeah, well, she does say him then, but I guess. It almost seems like afraid of like what's gonna happen to him rather than her being like, no, fuck this guy. You know?
Prior
she
to it?
says the quote here is Daenerys had gone cold all over because she knows what Drogo is about to do to him.
Yeah.
So it's not just like she feels like mean and hate on like defensive of her child, like right there. I mean, she does feel defensive of the child, but she doesn't flip to being like, okay, no, you're gonna die now because you killed or you threatened my kid. Like
she has an overly calm, like psychopath.
She doesn't, and at least in the text, at least, she doesn't think immediately negative towards him. Like most other characters, like when that happens, like when you point a sword or something to a child, they're gonna instantly like, no, you can't fucking do this. And Daenerys sees him weeping and laughing. That's when the man who had once been her brother like starts off. She said, the saddest thing, the thing that tore her afterwards was the way he smiled. That's all I wanted, he said. And then, so she goes from like pleading to life to being sad to being curiously calm. So I mean, that's just a really strange shift of emotions. She doesn't feel passionately about anything that happened there.
Okay.
So, I don't know. It's interesting. There's trains of thought. As the story goes on, that Daenerys has actually inherited the crazy gene from Ares.
Well, what is it?
So, I don't know.
Is it Barristan that says that quote about the two sides of the coin? With every Targaryen, the gods flip it, and they're either crazy or not crazy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know the quote. I almost want to say or Tyrion. It sounds like a Tyrion thing.
Pretty sure it's Paris.
It could be, but I don't know. We talk about
You're frozen and cut out, by the way. Like you keep freezing.
Well, yeah, I know.
Okay.
Good?
Yeah.
He's like, but yeah, the idea that's losing her talking point of Daenerys losing her mind throughout the story, like, keeps popping up in her mind. It seemed like this was maybe like an early sign of that. Her emotions just, they kind of go like a 180 without being extreme in any way. It stood out to me. Worth mentioning.
She disassociates, basically, you know. Maybe that's her way of handling the situation, that she's about to see her brother murdered. So she's kind of taking herself out of it.
I guess, but I mean, like, with what she was just saying, like, how he was the only thing she had to tie her to her family.
Yeah. I don't know.
I would have expected a more response in some way, shape, or form.
From Dany?
Rather than curiously calm at the end.
I don't know. She's crazy.
I don't know. It's a talking point. Not necessarily one I believe, but one up for discussion, nonetheless. Do you have anything else?
So can I have my Katie moment? Your face.
It's your pod, but is it cast? What's up?
Okay, so I was going through the whole thing, the Dashka, the prophecy, and it just really, it means absolutely nothing, but I thought it was interesting, where, again, it says, his enemies will tremble before him, and their wives will weep tears of blood and rend their flesh in grief. The bells in his hair will sing his coming, and the milkmen in the stone tents will fear his name. That reminds me of the Red Wedding. So, the weeping tears of blood and rending their flesh, so that's Kat. You know, she's scratching her face off. And then the bells in his hair, Jingle Bell, right? Because he's the one that she slits his throat. Aegon Frey. Yeah. Yep. So that reminded me of that. It means absolutely nothing. It was just an interesting parallel that means absolutely nothing, hence why it is a Katie moment. But that's all I got for that.
Well, yeah. I mean, the same things are there. Swift as wind he rides. I mean, you could almost associate that to Grey Wind.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't think so.
Yeah, it was something.
You know, sure. Do we want to go ahead and tell them what our next chapter is?
Do we know what our next chapter is?
No, I was putting you on the spot.
Am I supposed to pick the next chapter?
Yeah, I picked the last two.
Alright, so let's do...
Or should we put it out to our listeners and see if any of them actually picked the same chapter?
All 7 of them?
There's 7 chapters left, that's it?
No, all 7 listeners.
We don't have 7.
Well, aren't we sending this one to the group?
All of them? No.
Let's discuss this after we stop recording. I wanted to do the chapter where Ned confronts Cersei.
That was the one prior.
Is it?
Literally the...
Oh, it is. You're right,
one
it is.
Just before this.
Okay. Well,
because I've been reading along.
Well, these chapters aren't for like another week or two, but you wanted to avoid...
Lily flipped me off, by the way.
Shh.
No, I mean, we can hit a couple more this week.
This week?
Yeah.
All right. Wrap it up and say bye, and then we can talk about this.
We're going to do a John chapter next. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll send it out to you.